Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining. Today, we have the great honor and privilege of having Miss Denise Lee with us. Denise is a 4.5-year lung cancer survivor. She was born and raised in the Midwest, went to college in the East Coast, and attended law school on the West Coast. She's also an avid reader who loves to travel. If Denise had to pick a phrase that encapsulates her journey, she'd say, "A billboard saved my life," literally. She's joining us today with the American Lung Cancer Screening Initiative to share her story. Denise, thank you so much for taking time out of your day and your willingness to be here with us.
Oh, no, thank you so much for having me. I think what you guys are doing is just great. So I'm really, really excited to be here.
Thank you. So are we. So before we continue, we want to launch a quick poll to get a feel of the audience we have today. We have just 2 questions that ask how much you know about lung cancer and lung cancer screening. So if everyone can just take a couple of seconds to fill this poll out, that would be awesome. Awesome. So it looks like we have most of the responses in, so I'll end the poll and share the results. It's really exciting. It looks like we have people with all levels of knowledge. Some people haven't heard about lung cancer or lung cancer screening, which is totally okay. And then some people know everything there is to know about it. So it's great to see that we have a mix of people in the audience today. And hopefully through our discussion and through Ms. Denise's story, we'll be able to learn more about both topics. So to introduce myself and my team, with me, I have Anish, and my name is Priyanka Senthil, and we are part of the American Lung Cancer Screening Initiative, or ALCSI for short. And for those who might not be familiar with our organization, we have a couple of slides to share about who we are. ALCSI is a 501c3 nonprofit that works to raise awareness for lung cancer and lung cancer screening. We are a team of over 200 students and doctors located across the United States. And we do the work that we do because lung cancer is the deadliest cancer in the world, causing more deaths than breast, prostate, and colon cancers combined. Lung cancer causes about 380 deaths per day in the US alone. Lung cancer is very fatal because currently many patients are being diagnosed at a late stage when the cancer has grown and spread to other parts of the body. Lung cancer screening is an effective imaging technique that can be used to screen for lung cancer and has been shown to catch lung cancers early. However, less than 6% of people at high risk for lung cancer are currently getting screened. The screening rate for lung cancer is much lower than the screening rates for breast, cervical, and colon cancers, which are about 70%. We believe that educating people about lung cancer and lung cancer screening is one of the most important and effective ways to increase the lung cancer screening rate for populations that would benefit from lung cancer screening. So far, we've given over 120 presentations on lung cancer screening to universities, hospitals, medical schools, and organizations around the US, as well as India, Canada, Brazil, and Mexico, reaching over 10,000 people. Over the last year, we worked with 118 mayors from every single US state to issue proclamations recognizing November as National Lung Cancer Awareness Month. We've also had the opportunity to work with several leaders at the state level, including Arizona State Senator Leila Alston, who's a lung cancer survivor, Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf, and Lieutenant Governor of Colorado, Diane Primavera, to increase awareness of lung cancer screening. In addition to our education, outreach, and advocacy efforts, we recently started a podcast series to share the personal side of lung cancer and provide a platform for lung cancer survivors and advocates to share their stories. ALCSI has also worked with US Congress members and senators to draft and advocate for the first ever House and Senate resolutions recognizing the importance of the early detection of lung cancer through screening. And in December 2020, the Senate resolution was passed with unanimous consent, marking the first time the US has ever recognized the importance of lung cancer screening. ALCSI has also actively been working with Representative Brendan Boyle and Senator Tina Smith to draft and advocate for Catherine's Law for Lung Cancer Early Detection and Survival Act of 2021. Lastly, we want to end by talking a little bit about lung cancer screening. Lung cancer screening is done using a low-dose computed tomography scan. This scan uses low radiation doses, is pain-free, and takes less than 5 minutes to complete. The United States Preventive Services Task Force, also known as the USPSTF, sets guidelines for who should be screened for lung cancer. Right now, they recommend that people between the ages of 50 and 80 who have a 20-pack year smoking history or more, and who are current or former smokers who quit within the past 15 years get annual low-dose CT scans. 1 pack year is defined as smoking on average 1 pack a day for 1 year. And therefore, 20 pack years can be met by smoking 1 pack a day for 20 years or smoking 2 packs a day for 10 years, for example. If you know anyone who might be eligible for lung cancer screening based on the criteria listed on the previous slide, please share this link given by the QR code so they can contact one of our doctors about lung cancer screening. And finally, we want to highlight that there are other risk factors for lung cancer in addition to smoking, such as exposure to asbestos, a family history of lung cancer, COPD, and previous radiation therapy to the lung. We believe it's important that we recognize these additional risk factors because a large number of people in the US who have never smoked still get lung cancer. So thank you all for listening to that short presentation. And without further ado, we'll jump right into the podcast. We have a couple of questions prepared for Ms. Denise, but we also have a Q&A session at the end where you all can submit any questions you have for her. And this podcast is being recorded and will be shared on our Spotify, Anchor, Google, and Apple podcasts, as well as our YouTube channel. So first off, Denise, could you please introduce yourself and share your background?
Sure. My name is Denise Lee, and I currently live in Fremont, California, which is a little south of San Francisco, probably about 40 miles south of San Francisco. I've lived here since in California since 1986. I lived in Washington, D.C. before that, and I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan before that. So I've bounced around a bit. I am an avid reader. I am a lawyer, retired, criminal defense, public defender. That was my career path, and I did that for about 28 years. And I retired, and I love to travel. I love to read. I was fairly athletic. I ran marathons, half marathons, all while smoking. I started smoking when I was 14, and I quit when I was 54. So I smoked a total of 40 years. And then I was coming home one day from work, and there was a billboard on the side of the road that said and I was stuck in traffic, so it's really not much you can do when you're stuck in traffic except turn up your music and look at things that are going on around you. And I did that, and I noticed that there was a billboard that said, if you currently smoke or quit in the past 15 years, this scan or this new procedure or new scan can save your life. And so that's kind of a little bit of my background.
Progress. Could you please talk about your lung cancer journey overall?
Overall, honestly, I was very fortunate. And the reason I was fortunate was because it was detected very early. I went to my primary care physician shortly after I'd seen that billboard, and she did not order the test because she said I didn't qualify. And according to the guidelines at that time, I didn't qualify because I was only 54. And at that time, it was 55 to 80. And you were eligible. And so I left her office, and then 2 or 3 months later, I went back because I had a cold and I was getting ready to go to Sicily for a month. And I didn't want to go over there with a cold and runny nose and all that. And so I went to her to get some cough medicine. And I said, oh yeah, by the way, I think I qualify for this exam you told me I didn't qualify before, but I really do think I qualify. Because I went on the savedbythescan.org with American Lung Association. They have a quiz that you can take to determine whether or not you're eligible. And when I went on there and took that quiz, it said I was eligible. So when I went back to see her, I said, I took this quiz on Google. If Google says it, it must be true. And they said that I was eligible for this test, and then she did order it. And the difference was that when I first went, I was 54, and when I went back just 3 months later, I had turned 55. So I met the requirements. So I went on my trip, came back. I think like 2 days after I came back, I went to get the CT scan, and it took about 5 minutes. And then the next day, a pulmonologist called me, and I had never heard of a pulmonologist, never needed one, didn't know what they did. And he wanted me to come in right away, and I did. And he mentioned that there was a mass in my lung, and he started asking me other questions about diseases, TB, whether or not I hung out in Arizona, because apparently there's some respiratory thing going on in Arizona. And then he sent me, he sent me to get a PET scan. And I had a PET scan, I had a brain MRI, and then I saw I had a pulmonary function test. And then I had a bronchoscopy, which is a biopsy. And the interventional radiologist, said clipped a portion of it, and it came back malignant. At that time, he thought it was, based on what he had seen, he thought it was either stage 2B or 3A. And then I spoke to a thoracic surgeon, and it was good. Everything happened very quickly. I really did not have any time to think. It happened very quickly. And then my surgery was scheduled. So I was diagnosed on Valentine's Day. And I had my surgery on March 8th of 2018. And a lot of testing, a lot of appointments. Then I had my upper left lobe removed, and I had 17 lymph nodes removed. And they came back from pathology that there was no cancer in the lymph nodes. And so they downgraded it from instead of a 2B to a 3A, they downgraded it to a 1B, which is like, yay. And then I went to see an oncologist, and I started chemotherapy because I had some factors that were indicative of a higher rate of recurrence. So the oncologist suggested that I do chemotherapy. And I didn't realize at the time, but that was, I was lucky in two respects. One, to be able to have surgery, because for many people, when they're diagnosed with lung cancer, they can't have surgery because it's spread too far. So that was blessing number one. And blessing number two was that I had the opportunity to have chemotherapy, and the goal of the chemotherapy and the surgery was cure. And also, I was very fortunate because that doesn't happen that often. And so midway through my chemotherapy, my oncologist says, I think, there's this clinical trial. I think you might be eligible for it. And it was a clinical trial to determine whether or not the addition of immunotherapy after surgery and after chemotherapy would have any impact on the recurrence. And so I'm like, sure, I'll do it. And then I got one infusion of Opdivo, which is immunotherapy, once a month for a year. And one of the great things about the clinical trial was not just that I was able to participate in something that could help me and other people down the road, but also that my period of observation was 5 years. So every 6 months for 5 years, I got, or actually 4.5, because I'm not 5 years out, 4.5, I got a CT scan, blood work, and got monitored. And so that was really, that was really good. And then that was it.
Yeah, that's really amazing to hear. And right now the stats are that almost almost the majority of individuals are diagnosed with distant stage cancer when distant stage lung cancer, when the lung cancer has spread beyond the original site in the lung where it originated. And at that point, oftentimes surgery is not an option, and it's just the other chemotherapy and immunotherapy that are the options. So that's why it's so important that we catch lung cancer early. And lung cancer screening is one of the best ways to do it. That's why we advocate it.
Right. I was talking to a friend of mine this morning, and there was an advertisement about lung cancer screening, and she sent me a text. Oh yeah, I saw the advertisement. That's great. And she's a former smoker as well. I said, yeah. I said, you know, you qualify for this. You should really go get it done. And she's, you know, she says, well, yeah, but I smoked for such a long time. I'm afraid of what's even in my lungs. And I'm like, I totally get that, because, you know, it's scary. Okay, so what's in my lungs? Is there something there? It's really scary. But as I told her, you know, it's, for me at least, nobody wants a lung cancer diagnosis. I certainly didn't, but I was just really thankful that I got it as early as I did, so that I had so many different options, you know, options that a lot of people don't have. So I was just very thankful for that.
Yeah, we hear a lot of patients who are worried about the actual result of the scan. You know, a diagnosis like that of lung cancer is definitely life-changing, and you know, it brings a lot of changes with it. And we usually just recommend that they just talk with their primary care physician. They don't have to get the scan. They don't have to, you know, sign up for it immediately. Just maybe having a discussion can help them weigh the risk benefits of getting the scan.
Exactly, yeah.
And so on the topic of, you know, how big a diagnosis like that of lung cancer is, in what ways did your life change after being diagnosed with lung cancer?
Immediately, I became depressed. I was afraid I was going to die. You know, it was just very, very difficult. As far as changing now, I've been more in gratitude. And is this the type of thing that you're referring to, or are you referring to another area? I just want to get clear on that.
That's perfect, yes.
Okay. A lot of gratitude. I was humbled a lot. I was more aware, more compassionate. I bugged people on getting screened. I did that. I went through my contact list in my phone book, and I know a lot of smokers. You know, when you smoke, you know a lot of smokers. So I knew a lot of smokers, and I reached out to them, and very reflective, you know, very thoughtful. But it definitely, that diagnosis definitely made me humble. Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah.
Can you talk about the experience getting surgery and adjuvant chemotherapy? What were the days like leading up to surgery?
Honestly, I just wanted it out. I just get it out right now. And so, and once again, I really didn't have a lot of time to sit back and let it mess with my head, because everything was just happening so quickly. You know, I also got a second opinion. And so everything was happening so quickly that I just wanted the surgery as quickly as comfortably possible, to make sure that I got all my tests, to make sure that I talked to the right people, to make sure that, you know, I got a second opinion and I understood the ramifications. And I was fortunate that I had a really good thoracic surgeon. And, you know, but I just wanted it out. I'm like, get it out, get it out. So, And once I had the surgery, my mom is here, my mom and my sister. And, I would tell people that the hardest part of lung cancer was telling my mom, that I had lung cancer, because my mom was 85. She'll be coming up, she has her 90th birthday this month. And it was just really hard to have to fly back to Arizona, because that's where she lives, and tell her that, because we lost my dad to cancer. It wasn't lung cancer, but it was still cancer. So, she was just caretaker. And my grandfather, her father, died of cancer. And then her mother, my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, had cancer as well. So it was, the hardest part really, most challenging part was how do I do this? How do I do this? How do I go home and tell my mom? But once again, I come back to early detection, because it was, my cancer was discovered early. I could go home and say, Mama, I have lung cancer. But guess what? Because it was diagnosed so early, these are my options. This is what we're going to do. And that was another one of the advantages of having of early detection, is that I had options, and I had things that I could present. I didn't have to go home and say, yeah, Mama, I have lung cancer and there's nothing they can do. So the surgery itself, I was fortunate once again. I didn't have any problems. I didn't have a collapsed lung. I didn't have, it went pretty smoothly. Pain, I had no pain. My thoracic surgeon gave me a fentanyl block, which blocked all of my pretty much upper body. Only time I had a problem really was when they were trying to wean me off the fentanyl and place me on the, what do you call it, oxy. And I got sick, my blood pressure went crazy. But other than that, it was really, I was fortunate. They got me up walking right away, and, I was younger. I was 55 at the time. So, and I was athletic. So I was just fortunate that I didn't have a lot of problems.
I think you hit the nail right on the head, because as you said, when lung cancer is caught early, treatment options are better, prognosis is better. So, I think it's just always better. You don't have to be a scientist or a doctor to get that. Catching any disease early is going to be better.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So for someone who might not know much about lung cancer screening, a common fear is what the experience of actually getting screened is like. So could you talk a little bit more about that?
The procedure itself is actually pretty quick and easy. It's like 5 minutes. You go in, you lay down on a bed, and you raise your hands up over your arm. Wait a minute, because the first time I had it, they don't give it to you with contrast. I have it with contrast all the time, which is they give me an injection. But the first time I had it, I did not have an injection. They just put me, lay down on this bed, and then you go through this, I call it the vertical donut, because you go through this hole and then you come back out and you go through again. They tell you to hold your breath, you come back out, and that is it. And then you go on your merry way. So it was, like I said, it takes all of 5 minutes, if that. So it was, I think the scariest part really is just getting in there. It's just getting in there is the scary part, because once they put you through the scan, you're going to have results. And it's that time where it's just scary, it's just scary.
You mentioned earlier that when you first heard about your diagnosis, you went to a really dark place. It was hard to digest what had just happened. What are some strategies you use to get through those difficult times and kind of uplift yourself?
I think a lot of it had to do with my I don't know if misconceptions is the correct word, but lung cancer has such a stigma. And the thing is, okay, I'm diagnosed, and for me, when I hear lung cancer, it's, people think that I have lung cancer. They're going to blame me. They're going to say it's my fault because I was a smoker. And two, my concept of lung cancer is that once you're diagnosed with lung cancer, then that's it. Because people, because of the stigma, there's like there's really nothing you can do. And it wasn't until I started researching that I realized just how many advances have been made in the field of lung cancer over the past 15, 20 years. It's not what it used to be, and things are changing. When I say it, I mean treatments. They're coming up with new treatments, they're coming up with new medications all of the time. And so by doing that, what helped me get out of the dark place, two things really. One was looking at all the ways that the field was dealing with lung cancer now, all of the new things, all of the positive treatments, all of the clinical trials. And the second thing really was I had a mentor. I had a mentor through this organization called Immerman Angels. And what they do is you fill out a piece of paper, you fill out the questionnaire, and they want to know from you certain things like your age and the kind of cancer, the kind of lung cancer and the treatment and the stage and stuff like that. And they pair you with someone who is as similar as possible. And I was paired with a woman who had gone through everything that I had gone through. And it was somebody who I could talk to, who knew exactly what I was going through. Because not all cancer is equal. I could find a bunch of places that dealt with breast cancer and a bunch of support groups that dealt with cancer as a whole, whether it's, prostate or whether it was colorectal. But as you said, lung cancer, at the very beginning, lung cancer kills more people than breast, colon, and say prostate or pancreas, prostate cancer combined. So it was really important for me to find a support group that dealt with lung cancer, because then I would come in contact with people who knew what it like to be on the other end of the stigma, or knew what it was like to have people say, well, you smoked for 40 years, so you deserve it, that type of thing. So those are really the two things that helped get me out of the dark place, was researching and looking at those things, or looking at the evolution of lung cancer treatment, and also getting a mentor. So that's what really, 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 really helped. And then once I did that, then I started to see, oh, well, wait a minute, my lung cancer is stage 1B. A lot of people their lung cancer isn't diagnosed until it's a stage 3 or 4. Well, how lucky is that? That type of thing. And so once I found that out for myself, then I started to feel more hopeful.
I think you touched on some really important but also difficult topics, particularly the stigma around lung cancer. And we've heard from a lot of patients that when they share their diagnosis with others, sometimes the first question they get is, "Oh, I didn't know you were a smoker," or something along those lines. And that's really hard when whether you are a smoker or you're not a smoker. It's just that smoking and lung cancer have been so strongly associated for such a long time that people are really surprised to hear that upwards of 10 to 20% of lung cancers occur in never smokers, those who never even smoked a cigarette in their life. And a saying that we really like is that anyone with lungs can get lung cancer, and no one deserves it, because there's so many different causes and risk factors for lung cancer, and it might not just be the smoking, and that shouldn't even be part of the picture or conversation. Everyone should be entitled to the same type of treatment options.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so based on just what you were talking about earlier with about the support groups and just having a mentor, I think I might know the answer to this question, but what motivates you to share your lung cancer story so publicly, because it is such a private story?
When I say a billboard saved my life, literally, that's what happened, and I want people to know that they can get screened. It's just so important. If you're eligible to get screened, then get screened. You know, if you're a current smoker or a prior smoker in the last 15 years, then get screened. I mean, it's simple. It saved my life. And everyone else, there are a lot of people who could benefit from that. We just have to get them on the bed and going through the donut. Yeah. So that's why.
We're all truly inspired by everything that you do in the lung cancer community and how strong you are discussing everything, how open you are with everything. Could you please take us through everything that you do in the lung cancer community as far as like advocacy and outreach?
Well, as you know, today is the World Lung Cancer Day. So I actually signed up for the GoTo Foundation. You're familiar with the GoTo Foundation. They have this run walk. And I used to run, but I won't be running it. So I signed up. It's a little fundraiser. They have it in various cities across the nation. You don't have to be a lung cancer survivor in order to participate. So I'm looking at all the people on this Zoom meeting. So each one of you can sign up to raise money for lung cancer awareness. So I just signed up for that. What I do is I am a mentor through Immerman Angels. I'm also a mentor through the GoTo Foundation. I'm part of the Lung Force Advocacy Day, where essentially with the American Lung Association, I'm a Lung Force hero. And once a year in March, I believe it's March of every year, we get together with other Lung Force heroes. And the past 2 years, we've talked to various congressmen and senators in Washington and basically pitch them for more money for cancer research and testing and funding of the National Institute of Health. And so it's basically raising money for lung cancer awareness or having money appropriated for lung cancer awareness. I just spoke at the National Lung Cancer Roundtable Summit in Washington, D.C. That was the week before last as a patient advocate. So I was really, it was a privilege and an honor to do that. Anytime I do anything in the lung cancer community, it is a privilege and an honor to be able to share my story and get out there and help other people. I'm also part of the Lung Cancer Patient Advisory Group, which deals with issues facing lung cancer patients. So those are the types of things. And I'm always available to talk to people about lung cancer, whether they personally have it, whether they have a family member, because I think that sometimes people forget the caretakers, in any kind of cancer, but specifically, since we're talking about lung cancer, I mean, lung cancer takes a toll, not just on obviously the survivors or the patients, but also takes a toll on the family. And late stage lung cancer, the caretaking for that is difficult. So those are the types of things I do as far as advocacy is concerned.
Wow, it is just so inspirational to hear your work, and we truly do need people like you who are working to advocate for more funding for lung cancer and just building a stronger community for lung cancer, anyone affected by lung cancer. Yeah. So just thank you so much for the work that you do.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Like I said, it is truly an honor and a privilege to be able to share my story and possibly help other people.
Awesome. So switching gears a little bit, in your opinion, what are the current challenges that the lung cancer community faces?
Funding. I think there's still a stigma attached with lung cancer and fear. I think those are some of the challenges. I was talking to someone and said it's one thing for a person not to know that there is early detection, that there's lung cancer screening. But once a person who's eligible finds out that there's lung cancer screening and they are eligible, what prevents them from making the appointment and going in and getting it done? And lots of times that's fear. So how can we bridge the gap between, yes, I know about it, but I'm afraid to go in? Well, how do we plug up that piece so people say, yeah, I know about this test, and although I'm afraid, I'm still going to get it done. Because a cancer diagnosis, but once again, lung cancer, because this is what we're talking about, lung cancer diagnosis is devastating. At least it was for me. And it changed my life in an instant. And most people don't want their lives changed in an instant. They're happy going about doing what they're doing and going on vacations and not being interrupted. And, you know, they're good with what's going on. And then all of a sudden you have a lung cancer diagnosis and it's like, okay, so what now? What do I do now? And so I do think that one of the things that the lung cancer community has to maybe think about is we can let all the people in the world know about the scan, but if they know about it and they're still not getting scanned, how do we get them on that table and going through that donut?
Yeah, I think that's so important because as we touched upon earlier, the screening rate for lung cancer is less than 6%, which is really extremely low compared to screening rates for breast, prostate, and colon cancer. These other cancers that also have screening recommendations recommended by the USPSTF, and those screening rates are about 70%. So I think fear, as you mentioned, is definitely a huge factor, and then also comes with a cost of screening for individuals who might be underinsured or uninsured, and then just access to screening, because sometimes if people are living in more rural areas or in states where there aren't as many screening centers, that can also be a burden. So yeah, I think there are lots of different potential concerns and barriers that I think we need to, as a community, need to think about.
You know, but I also think that I think to some extent the medical field has a responsibility in pushing lung cancer screening. I remember when I was talking to my oncologist, and this was just like a month ago, and I was telling him that I was speaking at this thing at this event in DC. He mentioned to me that at the hospital where he previously worked, the doctors did not push lung cancer screening. And I think, to me, and this is just my opinion, but I think that what's going to end up happening is that people are going to needlessly die from lung cancer because screening is not being pushed, just like the screening for breast cancer or prostate cancer. It's not equal. Lung cancer, breast cancer, and lung cancer, and treatment, finances, spending, funding, they're not equal, even though lung cancer kills more women than breast cancer. You know, go figure. So, okay, I'm done with that. I'm sorry. Had to get that in.
No, I think that's again another important point. I completely agree, because I think patients really do trust their doctors, and we get that time and time again, and like some studies have shown that even healthcare providers aren't aware of the lung cancer screening guidelines or the specifics, like that you have to be between 50 and 80 years. And some are still following the 2013 screening guidelines, which are slightly outdated since the lower age bound has decreased from 55 years to 50 years, and the pack your smoking history requirement has also been lowered. So the new screening guidelines that were released in 2021 almost double the number of minority individuals and women who are eligible for screening, which is huge. And so one, just educating healthcare providers who aren't aware of the guidelines, and then that they have been changed, I think is huge, because a lot of times patients won't might not really know about any treatment options unless it's being discussed by their primary care doctor or
Yeah, because I didn't know that there was such a thing as a low-dose CT scan until I saw that billboard. I thought the only way that they could diagnose lung cancer was just a standard CT scan. So.
You mentioned earlier, again, that there was a bit of a internal fear. There's an external fear with the stigma associated with lung cancer. And just the whole process is clearly, we've talked to multiple people and they all say it's nerve-wracking, things along those lines. So what advice do you have for someone who's newly diagnosed with lung cancer? I know one of the things that we always talk about is, what do you ask your doctor first? How do you think of even asking a question when you receive news like that?
I would, if I'm newly diagnosed, look in hindsight, I would, and that's exactly what I did. I would get a mentor as quickly as possible. Somebody who had been through that situation, who knows what it likes and can talk to you. That was the, and actually I had two. I had one from Immerman Angels and I had one from the American Cancer Society. And that really saved me. The other thing is, ask questions. If you don't understand something, ask your doctor. The doctor needs, don't be afraid to ask your doctor questions. If you don't understand something, ask your doctor questions. If something doesn't make sense, ask your doctor questions. Because you're right, a lot of people who are diagnosed with diseases just, okay, well, I trust my doctor. And I trust my doctor too, but I'm gonna ask my doctor questions because I think it's just part of advocating on behalf of yourself. So my two things is, if you are newly diagnosed, get a mentor, because that's going to help you with the fear. At least it helped me with the fear. And make sure you ask your doctor questions. And hopefully somewhere along the line, someone will tell you of all the wonderful things that are happening in the lung cancer community. But sometimes what happens, or at least I can say for myself, is that there was a great deal of isolation because I was afraid to tell people that I was diagnosed with lung cancer, because everybody knew I was a smoker. And I was afraid, I was afraid to tell people because I thought that they would feel that I would deserve it, and I was just afraid. But if you get a mentor who was a former smoker and who had lung cancer, that helps. That helps.
Could you just explain for the listeners, how exactly do you get a mentor? Like, what organizations do you reach out to, and how does that work?
Okay, now once I was diagnosed, actually what happened was I contacted my, what is the phrase? It was a part of my hospital. She was my, what is the person that helps you? A nurse navigator. She was my nurse navigator. And I said, I need some referrals for some services. I need to be able to talk to somebody. I now remember one time I called the American Cancer Society and I was just crying because I was so afraid. And I just said, I just need to talk to somebody. I just need to talk. And that's how I ended up with the American Cancer Society's mentor. But Immerman Angels was as a result of my nurse navigator giving me a bunch of resources. And one of those resources where I could get help was Immerman Angels. So I called, did I call them? I can't remember if I called them or if I looked them up online, but in any event, I, said that I wanted a mentor, and I had to fill out, information about myself, like my name and, when I was diagnosed and what the course of treatment was and stuff like that. And all of that information was gathered so that the people who ran the organization could match me with the person could put me with the person with whom I matched the most. So I ended up getting matched with a person who had the same stage I did, same surgery I had, was roughly the same age, and was getting the same course of treatment that I had. I mean, that was perfect. And I remember and the good part about it was that she and I were both alike, because we were always researching stuff. I'm asking these questions. I want to know, right? And so that was great. But the really great part about it is because my doctor never suggested that I get a port. And I have really small veins. And it can take a lot to get a blood draw. And so I told her, I said, well, my doctor, I'm reading this stuff about a port, but my doctor never mentioned that. And she said, oh, no, you need to talk to your doctor. Your doctor needs to make sure you get a port. You call him right now. And sure enough, it was a lifesaver. So, and they tell you those things that your doctor may or may not tell you. So And this is not, so that's how you get a mentor.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think that's super helpful for people listening on the call. So this is a slight twist to the question we just asked, but for someone who has a loved one who was recently diagnosed with lung cancer, do you have any advice for how they can best support and help the patient?
Ooh. Listen. Just listen. Be a listening board as they talk. I would also make sure they don't go to their doctor's appointments by themselves. Go with them. And I was fortunate enough, it wasn't a family member, it was a really good friend. She went with me, every time I had a doctor's appointment, she drove me and she went with me and she sat there with me. Because I can guarantee you, I would listen to my thoracic surgeon say something, and when I get out of the appointment, I had absolutely no idea what she said. Or I thought she said X, but in fact, she said Y. So it's really, really good to have, it's really good to have someone go with you when you go. I would make sure that you refer them to lung cancer organizations, people that can help. Because usually you don't, at least had it not been for my nurse navigator, I would not have known where to go. So one of the things a person can do is they can look up for themselves, your support person or your family member, look up, support groups, and always remain positive. Always remain positive. Because your loved one is going to feed off of you.
So last question from us. Having cancer changes so much about life in general. So what words of wisdom do you have for people post-cancer as far as being able to live a full life once again?
That's an interesting question, because when I finished up my treatment, when I finished up my clinical trial, I remember sitting in my oncologist office and we were talking, and I'm like, okay, so okay, let me just back up. For me, I felt really good as long as I was getting treatment. So when as long as I knew that something was being done about my cancer. So when I had surgery, it was great because something was being done. When I was having chemotherapy, it was great because something was being done. When I was doing immunotherapy, it was great because something was being done. And then when I finished up all of my treatment, it's like, now what? And now what? And I remember my oncologist, I said to him, I said, okay, so now what do we do? And he said, you go out and live your life. And I remember him saying that, and it took me, I'm like, no, you don't understand. I'm a cancer survivor. So now what am I supposed to do? He said, you go out and live your life, and I'm like, to some extent, I didn't feel really as if I knew how. But that's what I did. I just went out and lived my life, and I didn't worry about, okay, well, let me back that up. I didn't worry as much about having a recurrence, But one thing about it, when I was going through treatment, I worried about everything. I worried about whether I was going to lose my hair. I worried about whether or not I was going to get sick. I worried, about, whether I was going to have people there. And I worried about so much. And after that was all over with, you know what? 95% of the stuff I worried about never happened. And then I could never get that time back because I spent it worrying about stuff that never happened. So post-cancer treatment, I would say, borrowing the words of my oncologist, just go out and live your life and live every day to the fullest.
I think that's honestly the greatest way to approach life. I think that is the way to approach life.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Denise, for taking time out of your day to share your story with us.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Now I'd like to open the floor for our participants to ask you any questions they may have regarding your story, and if you feel comfortable answering them, of course. So anyone would like to ask Denise, a question, please put it in the chat or unmute.
So I received a question from an audience member, and I'm not sure if there's a correct answer to this, but they asked, what should patients do if they think they are at higher risk for lung cancer but do not meet the lung cancer screening guidelines?
That's a good one. I would talk to my primary care physician and explain to him or her why you think that you are at high risk or at higher risk, and work with them to make a decision on the best path forward. That would first of all be the thing that I would do. Second, I would find out whether or not your insurance, whether or not you could actually pay out of pocket for the screen, and if so, how much, even if you're not eligible for insurance coverage. Because most insurers cover the screen if you fall within that 50 to 80 and a PAC a year requirement. So if you fall outside of that, how much would the scan cost? And if it's doable, if it's feasible, just pay out of pocket.
So I received a question that says, do you ever wonder how different your life could have been if not for that billboard?
Oh yeah. My lung cancer, the tumor itself, they have apparently 3 different grades, grade 1, 2, and 3. And a lot of it, according to my oncologist, the difference is when you look at a slice of the tumor underneath a microscope, does it look like healthy cell or healthier cell? And my lung cancer was a grade 3, which is categorized as poorly differentiated, which is a I guess it spreads quicker, and I think that had I, say for instance, right now, if I had gone in for my scan, I know I would be stage 4. If I had waited 5 years, if I got it done today, I'd probably be stage 4, or if not before. And I owe my life to that billboard because I was able to see it and I was able to take action. So I definitely owe my life to that billboard.
Absolutely. And so you touched upon earlier, you touched upon cost and talked about insurance. And so just wanted to talk a little more about that, since I think a lot of individuals have questions about that. But because the USPSTF lung cancer screening guidelines, the grade B recommendation, most, as you said, most private insurances will cover the cost of lung cancer screening. And in the cases that they don't, or in individuals underinsured or uninsured, on average, a lung cancer screening test costs about anywhere from $300 to $400, but it does vary based on the institution and clinic that the screening test is being done at. So if that's ever a concern, though, we would just recommend that patients talk to their primary care provider about the cost. And there's a lot of assistance programs, so oftentimes there are other options rather than just paying the full cost of the screening exam. And so last question that we received from the audience, they asked, what do you hope to see accomplished within the lung cancer field in the next 5 to 10 years?
Honestly, what I'd like to see is screening to the level that they have in breast cancer and prostate cancer. Now the recommendation is for a mammogram in my age range every year. I'm hoping, that they do that for lung cancer. every year, every 2 years, every 3 years, but make it something where that's comparable with lung cancer, breast cancer, the screening, more screening. And screening that is not necessarily contingent upon whether you smoked, when you smoked, how much you smoked, just screening. I would really, really, really love to see it, because as was mentioned earlier, I know a lot of people, relatively speaking, who were diagnosed with lung cancer at a late stage who were never smokers. And I get the benefit, quote unquote, of the screen because I was a smoker. But someone who's a non-smoker and may have a risk for another reason, whether it's radon or it's environmental or whatever, doesn't have that benefit because they didn't smoke, but they have just the same risk that I would have, but for another reason. And so I just hope that we can see screening, a more elevated level of screening, and not being dependent upon whether you smoked or not. So
I think on that note, we can conclude today's podcast. Again, thank you so much for your willingness to share your story and perspective on many of the pressing issues in the lung cancer community. We truly, truly, truly appreciate the work that you're doing to help raise awareness about lung cancer. And thank you everyone for joining our podcast. Please keep an eye out for our upcoming podcasts and events, which will be listed on our website, www.alci.org. We also encourage you to join our monthly newsletter where we share updates on upcoming projects within our organization. Please fill out this Google form if you would like to be added to the mailing list. Before we end this, we would like to offer a brochure highlighting some key information about lung cancer and lung cancer screening. If you find this helpful or know of anyone who might benefit from the information included in the brochure, feel free to share it. Today is World Lung Cancer Day, so if you know someone eligible, please talk to them about screening because it truly can and will save lives. And thank you, Denise. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
And thank you so much for everything that you're doing. Thank you so much for getting the word out.
Thank you, Denise. Thanks, everyone.